in every branch of military, when the shit hits the fan and we need help and we can't find it and we don't know what to do, we don't turn to the fucking Ghostbusters. We turn to our mediums, our psychics, and our remote viewers.
False.
And if you have trouble believing that, you can leave it to a president to speak out on it.
A small plane go down somewhere in Africa. We were not able to find it by surveillance. So the director of the CIA heard about a woman in California that was a medium, and she gave him the latitude and longitude of the plane's whereabouts. We located the plane where she said it was.
President Jimmy Carter said that in 2016.
But essentially, it was within 15 miles of that place. So if people are already looking, they pretty much got a message, hey, the psychic said you're on the right track. And they get this energized feeling and they found it. That's exactly what happened.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everyone. This is Believers vs. Skeptics, episode 3. And today I'm joined once again by my mostly worthy adversary, Nick Larman. Nick, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Faust, you sounded kind of down when you went to my introduction. I'm
totally thrown by your hat.
Today, Skeptics, we rise.
I love that hat, dude. You just busted that out for me. That was nice of you.
No, it's passed down for generations in my family.
Is it a Russian thing?
It's not a Russian thing. We use it as a means of punishment. We make fun of the believers in it. It's like it's like a hateful propaganda piece.
I see.
Let me take it off. You're right.
I mean, it's great. Maybe it even works. I don't know. We'll see. So today we are going to debate and discuss and talk about the validity of remote viewing, because it's high time that somebody came out with this and discussed this, and we will today for you. So remote viewing is so where it came from was the Americans either discovered or were propagandized into believing, one or the other. There's a lot of evidence to support that they discovered, although Nick will likely argue that this was all a misdirection propaganda machine by the Russians. But the Cold War started basically after World War II, and the German scientists were discovered to have been playing with a lot of this stuff, and so the Soviets and the Americans did what they had done the moment that war ended, and that was compete for, a foot up, and who was gonna get there first, who was gonna do it better, who was gonna be the most superior superpower. And so the Americans caught wind that the Soviets had a lot of government funding set aside for this kind of science. But we intercepted a lot of documents, transmissions that led us to believe that they were doing this. And so at first they were like, shouldn't we be trying it out? And so they were looking for ways to try it out, which involved crazy excursions into Mexico, looking for magic mushrooms and they heard that would give them the ability. And of course, the end game was always mind control, of course, and the ability to manipulate, objects if that was possible. So that's kind of the origin story of the remote viewing program. Was you had a bunch of physicists working at Stanford Research Institute who wanted to study this, and they petitioned and they got money from, I think it was at first the DIA, and the DIA is basically like the CIA, except for defense and more of the armed forces. So but the CIA would play a huge part in all of this. And so that's kind of
the same guys, Faust, who Uri Gellar was involved with. So let's just make a note of this, everyone.
Well, so Uri Gellar, if you guys go back and watch episode 1 of Believers vs. Skeptics, and you will learn all about Uri Gellar, who we can't get into too much. But, we know what I learned about Uri Gellar. With the CIA, I may have known this before, but forgot. But the CIA cut ties with him. Well, Stanford cut ties with him when they found out that he was most likely reporting back to the Mossad, the Jewish kind of their KGB, their secret services. So three things real quick before we go at it. There's 3 aspects to remote viewing that you should understand. Okay. There's the clairvoyant aspect, and that's basically a fancy way of saying being able to see and sense to know where this or that person or this object is. That's clairvoyance. And some people access remote viewing through that. And then there's a telepathic aspect, right? I mean, have you ever thought of your mom and been thinking of your mom when she texted you or called you if you're as old as I am, or beeped you? No, I'm just kidding. I don't think my mom beeped me very much. She wasn't really into it. But at that exact moment, bam, like right there, like how that's great. Like the timing of that, doesn't that always make you think like, oh, my mom is just psychic, or maybe I'm psychic, you just have this notion like, oh, weird. How did I connect? Or I'm sure, and anyone who's listening, skeptic or believer, has had a moment where they were literally thinking of someone and that person reached out to them in some way, that is like, we call them coincidences, and we don't like to, it's hard for us to imagine that, we have this connection to everything. And the third thing is precognition, right? And that is the ability to, in the future. So this is tricky. Listen, I heard this explained and I was like, wait, what? There was a remote viewer who would make appearances on a show, and he would the night before, he would sketch out the target they were going to give him the day of the show, the following day. And when they asked him when they found out he was doing that, they asked him how he did that. He said that he was going to learn eventually what the target was. So he would just tune into that knowledge because it was there for him. So he was tuning into what he will know. And I was like, that's some mind-boggling shit right there.
That is fiction.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but that's how he explained it. Now,
what is his name?
Pat Price, who I'm going to talk about a lot. Pat Price, incredible guy, very controversial, did not meet a timely end. But where would you like to begin your demise in episode 3?
I don't know. Where do you want to start? Maybe we should start. I have a great place to start. I was just reading over these beautiful words prior to this episode.
Oh, okay.
Let's start with the conclusion of the CIA report that was recently declassified.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. This was a group of scientists from the Journal of Scientific Experiments who reviewed all of the studies and all of the conclusions. This is what they said. They said the first item, free response remote viewing was more successful than forced choice remote viewing. So there was there was some statistical significance. It was about 5 to 10%.
But wait, what does that mean?
So free response was basically when they were given the option to just freely speak versus given a series of choices, or so basically where they themselves had the ideation, not being forced into saying a particular thing. It was actually evidence for some kind of precognition or clairvoyance.
Okay.
Yeah. I call it coincidence, but as we go on, number 2, some people did perform better than others, but only about 1% 1% of people that were there were actually good at remote viewing. So they called it a rare talent.
Right? One out of how many?
1%.
Oh, 1%. Okay. Out of their
because the way they structured the experiments, initially they got a group of people who said they were psychics or who said that they had some like psychic powers. Basically, they got all of them, and then what I believe they did is they then broadened the search and looked for particular characteristics that showed you had the predisposition for being good at for possibly being good at remote viewing. They branched it out to the military, and the characteristics were, it was like being charismatic. They mentioned having a bit of an artistic side or an artistic talent, being very confident, being very loud and boastful. So basically, it's just like, imagine a frat bro who watches art house movies. Like, that's what they were looking for.
Do you know how many subjects they had?
They ended up actually having over 1,000 over the course of 20 years. Oh. So it was a pretty wide study, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it wide, but.
Yeah. I mean, like wide enough, or you know what? It might have even been more people. I have it here somewhere, but the point was like that they gave it a good shot and there was significance. So 1% were actually good at it, but the other conclusion was training was worthless and remote viewing ability can't be improved. So then
I've never heard of that before. So I did hear training is difficult, but I have not heard that remote that ability cannot be improved. What's that?
Worthless. She said training is worthless.
Oh, so she really
not difficult.
This is real science talk then, huh? I can't wait to read this article.
You know what? That's pretty funny.
Hardcore science talk.
You're right. She's like a modern scientist. She really she's honest with her colleagues.
Yeah,
Number 5
sounds like she's perfectly unbiased too. Go ahead. Number 5.
No, she wasn't biased, because like let's talk about the 3 positives I gave just to start this. That it was real, that people were good at it, that 1% were really good at it. It's just, training's worthless. It seems like she's saying you're either born for it or you're not. And then as we go on, feedback, number 5, seemed to enhance performance, which is quite interesting. Fits my narrative of suggestive, subjective analysis. Shielding the target made no difference to the quality of remote viewing. So,
so your hat useless. Shielding. It's fascinating. There's a lot of studies. I mean, that especially the early ones were big. They were really caught up on, well, can the distance and can the amount of things between the objects play a part? And they learned that no, there is no that does not contribute to whether a remote viewer has the capacity to do it or not. But so that's fascinating, because I mean, I found some studies as well, bigger pools than 1,000. I mean, I found one study, but I'm gonna get to that first. Speaking of statistical analysis, it's really important with statistical analysis, because any single or even multiple event incidents over time can be explained away by luck, guesswork, coincidence, if you believe in coincidences, but when you do controlled experiments over time, and you can really begin to collate studies, and then you can start to eliminate the possibility of luck.
Enlighten me.
You can see a pattern and realize that no such thing exists. But so what I want to tell you about is this amazing woman. Her name is Jessica Utz, and she's a professor of statistics at UC Irvine, and so she was asked.
Oh, I know.
I'm sure you saw some of this interview, right? She was asked to write a paper on remote viewing for Congress. So she took them, and she performed she collated all the statistics on them. And what she found was that the chances of remote viewing being somehow faked or chalked up to guesswork or coincidence, the odds of that being the case were 1 to the 10th billion. Okay. And what that means is that
I heard
she was saying that if people who were being tested were just guessing and getting it right by coincidence or luck, the amount of times that they did, the probability that they found and collected the data that they did was 1 to the 10th billion. So, I mean, that's really hard to, that number is astronomical. Okay. That's like, you could play the lottery from here to the end of time and not win it with those kind of odds. That is a logic defying number. It's so big. You can't even imagine 1 to the 10th billion. You know, that's crazy. It's a crazy number. I can't even think about writing it.
You really emphasize the strength of that number, Faust.
I mean, it's so
but
that
I have
was
a great
her
response to this.
Go ahead.
Or did you have more to add to it though?
I mean, I just wanted to tell you that, you know, the only statistical analysis that I could find that took in remote viewing and all the recognized studies that were done at these legitimate institutions like Stanford was this one. And it was done for Congress by a woman who specializes in statistical analysis.
Correct. She was the head of the statistics department for Stanford. No, for like UC Berkeley. Or was it Stanford?
That's where she worked. She worked at Berkeley. She was working at Berkeley, but she ended up working.
She volunteered there for a year.
Yeah, she volunteered because at the Stanford, and so she got a chance to witness a lot of what went on. So that would bias her, absolutely, but it also puts her in a front seat to see what's going on and call bullshit or not. You know, she's a stats person, so it goes both ways.
So I have two possible explanations for this.
Yeah.
The first one I'll give you as like the actual reported analysis by people who reviewed her work. So,
oh boy,
I brought it. I'm ready. I'm ready for this.
All right, talk to me, Goose.
So, a statistical anomaly does not necessarily mean that psychic ability, precognition, clairvoyance, or any of that's in effect. Only that something caused these outliers or these rare moments in the case data. And so there was something that linked every single successful case together. All of them shared one thing, and that was that they involved the same subjects and the same judge, who was the principal investigator, Edwin C. May. This is the same guy who locked up the data, and still to this day, even though it's declassified, he won't release the lock on this data from this study.
What?
If it was legitimate, if we could trust the biggest study ever conducted,
that it was
his
for Congress?
reputation rides on. Sorry?
Why though? Because it was for Congress? Why did they do that?
Because you know how the CIA was like recently declassified all these documents and studies from Stargate? That doesn't necessarily mean that academic professor has to release his. Yeah. So it's like an academic lock, but he has full right to open it up, and he didn't. And it's really interesting because his closest colleagues have been asked, like, have you guys seen the data? And they're like, no, he won't let us, no matter how much we ask him.
Interesting. Well, I wonder if he's not allowed. I imagine he's not allowed to. That's my guess.
He is. The thing is that he said one thing about the data out loud that made everyone sort of doubt his personal validity. And that was, he said that when he said he understood the speaking patterns and like the, let me look for the exact words he used.
All right, you do that.
He said, he was familiar with the response styles of the individual viewers. And the way he broke that down is if they said something like overpass and then they said a word like water, he could mean that, like, he's like, knowing their response styles, he would turn that into bridge in his like report or judgment.
Yeah.
That was his specific example use. So essentially it's like, it's just really strange because the most famous case, the one issued by Congress, all of the outliers that show significance or real precognition, clairvoyance, are this one guy with his knowledge of response styles. That's the reason he doesn't want to release these documents.
Speaking of precognition, I'm going to tell you about two incredible, legendary remote viewers. All right, one of them, the name was Ingo Swann. You may have heard that name, Ingo Swann.
Of course. The first fraud.
So Ingo actually, he, out of all the remote viewers, this dude had, he had his faults. He was a lot of things, but he came into a lot of fame because he had incredible ability. But yet this wasn't his world. He was from New York. He said, and I quote, that he was a homosexual living in New York at a time when there was a lot of discrimination going on, and he was, he had a rough childhood. But from the time he was young, he said he believed that he was not his body, and he always believed that his consciousness could go where his body could not. And he said, I think a lot of times while he would get beat up, he would, kind of exit himself that way. And anyway, he was an artist, and he some of the things that he did, they actually put him in charge of the department for a while. But on April 28th, 1973, Ingo was the first person to describe in detail the ice crystal rings around Jupiter. He told them, he said, the distance does not matter. And he kept telling them that if I want to see Jupiter, I can cast my consciousness to Jupiter. And so he did. And he described, and we're going to show the drawings that he made 9 months before Voyager arrived. Now, nobody in NASA, nobody predicted that Jupiter would have crystal fucking ice rings around it. But Ingo Swann did. No astronomer on the planet. This was 1973. All right. Nobody could, he was not an astronomer. It's not like he was like using we had no idea. This came as a great shock to NASA. So much of a shock that no one even bothered to talk about Ingo predicting it, because it was a big deal when they found these ice rings. Okay. April 28th, 1973, he predicted it 500 million miles away, 9 months before Voyager arrived. That is a documented precognition. I don't know what else you could call it. Now, the question is,
let me explain it.
Okay, but let me pose this question to the audience. And you guys tell me what you think in the comments, because my question is, was Ingo tuning into the future where he would learn that knowledge, or was he viewing, and I think that I think in this case he was using clairvoyance, because he drew it. It's on paper. I'm going to show you this. You're going to see this if you're watching the video. Just look, you'll see the painting or the sketch that he drew, but was he drawing based on what he imagined and what he would learn in the future? It's so crazy how interconnected it is. But go ahead, Nick, you tell me what you think happened there.
So, it's pretty obvious. I think that he saw that there was ice on the planet we visited right before that. He's like, okay, this planet is further. I bet I could make my career right now by stating that there's ice in those rings. Those rings aren't even ice. Like, yeah, sure, there's ice parts. I wouldn't call them ice rings. I would just call them like this gaseous collection. And he just benefited from the program.
But he's not an astronomer. He's not he was never into I mean, I don't think the dude knew much about Jupiter or the planet. He was not into that. I think he was just taking a look at Jupiter and saw rings around it and described what he saw. And this is nothing. This is a small thing. I'm going to tell you about some details that some remote viewers uncovered that is going to knock your fucking socks off.
Faust, let me bring up that exact moment. I found my note on it.
Okay.
They did a similar comparison. So it was Ingo Swann and Harold Sherman doing the remote viewing of Mercury and Jupiter. Targent Puthoff, the same guys who ran Stanford Research Institute. They were the ones who reported their remote viewings. Let me just say real quick, because I want to bring this up later. This whole thing gets blown out of the water if Targ and Puthoff are compromised and just like faking all this stuff to get more funding. That's a whole other theory, though. Let me dial it back a little bit. They said that they did a similar comparison to the exact words they'd said and found that 46% of the observation claims of the astral travelers were completely wrong, like just completely off the mark. Only one out of the 65 claims made by Ingo Swann and Harold Sherman was a fact that either was not obvious or not attainable from reference books. One.
Okay, there were no reference books about Jupiter having ice crystals, and that's the one I'm talking about. I don't know about this. I don't know about who Harold Clurman is. I never heard him, at least not anyone involved in the CIA with that name.
He was in the Mercury remote viewing. But basically, it's like these two were both two of the earliest remote viewings of other planets.
Okay. So that was
or great performances, depending on
that was just a lucky guess. I guess let's just chalk that one up to coincidence. He I don't know when wait a minute. Saturn is after Jupiter, not before, isn't it? Yeah, Saturn is after Jupiter, so he would not have learned about.
No, it is after, but that's why Jupiter has the no. The before that, wait, what is the fourth planet?
Jupiter.
No. We have
it's
Mars.
Earth.
Mercury. Mercury's number 4. Mercury has ice forming, so you could just take the observation of that and be like, okay, Jupiter has.
No.
It's coincidental.
No, it's Mercury, Venus.
Let's move on to the next.
Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn.
Then Mars has the ice.
Yeah, but Mars doesn't have ice crystal rings around a planet. That has ice in the poles.
But the rings were observed beforehand, before we got close enough to actually see what they were made out of. The actual crazy claim was that he knew they were made out of ice, which they weren't. They had ice floating in there, but he could have said anything. He could have said they're mineral rings, gas rings, ice rings, anything except fire rings, and he's good. He's a psychic.
He fucking drew them anyway. Okay, so that's an example of some. I think you could call it precognition. Now another great example. Somebody who was really fucking scary good at this was Pat Price. Now, Pat Price was a California policeman who became really the most widely acclaimed and astonishing remote viewer of all time because of the details that he was able to see, and because of the nature of those details, he really shook the intelligence community. I mean, they were not happy with this guy who was a police officer who could see these details, because these details should not be able to be seen by any human being. These were world-ending details, right? Like that, and so there was a huge concern when, so I only want to show you one thing. Okay, I want to show you this. I want to share my screen. It's a 2-minute clip.
Show it to me,
because I want you to understand what Pat Price would die an untimely death, a very suspicious death at the age of 55. And it was after some very, very intense and important remote views that he did that I think became very evident to the intelligence community. That was the reason he was targeted. Now, who targeted him is another question, but let me share my screen with you. This is the only part I want you to see, because I want you to understand the gravity of what this man did.
I want to understand it.
So if I share my screen, all right. So check this out, guys. This is Pat Price. I could probably shut the caption off, or shall I leave it on?
Whatever you think.
All right.
Yeah, you can leave it on.
All right.
Go back
or on
and get some more. Well, the obvious thing was to do something on the operational side. So I started searching around for a project that would have some impact. It was a research facility. That was all that we were going to tell them.
So this was our very first #1 Soviet site. Pat Price was the remote viewer in this case. The CIA people came and just gave us coordinates and said, look here.
And so he leans back in his chair, puts his glasses on, and I'm looking at him and I'm saying to myself, why does he put his glasses? He said, I put my glasses on because I can see better remotely when I have my glasses on. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, okay.
We sat down with our coffee and I said, here's the target, Pat. What do you see?
Next morning, they came back with a sketch.
And we showed him the picture.
So I go over and I say, well, I've got this science fiction fantasy crane.
Well, we looked at that and, were quite frankly astounded at the similarities.
And he unrolled a big picture of an R&D facility, and right in the middle of this facility was a photograph of a giant gantry crane.
So the sketch on the left is what Price produced, and this one is the one that is derived from the photographic
oil in Russia?
Photographic image.
No way!
He said, "Oh, this was a huge crane." He said, "I saw somebody walk by and the guy only came up to the axle."
This is a random site in Russia. Now listen,
up to the top of the wheels. Pat, what do you see?
What do you see underground?
Underground.
He said one of the big things they're doing here is making these 60-foot spheres out of steel.
Listen to this.
They're actually 58 feet.
What I was told was the analysts of Semipalatinsk did not know about the gores.
Gores.
They finally rolled out a 60-foot diameter steel sphere that's part of a containment vessel for a particle beam weapon to shoot down American surveillance satellites. Exactly what Price described.
Unknown until 1977. 2 years after his death, they uncovered that site.
Allegedly, according to these documentary filmmakers.
The end game is this big review occurs of all operations-oriented testing from a contractor like SRI should.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the. How do I stop this? Stop sharing. Okay, there we go. Hold on.
What do I have to say to that, guys? It's simple. He described, okay, they said, what do they have underground there? If I were to describe what I thought a bomb looked like in the early 1970s, I would describe a giant, 60-foot ball. That's a normal answer. You can't connect it.
Bombs don't look like. What are you talking about, dude? Listen, this revelation was so massive, and it occurred after this man was taken out. And a lot of people argue that this was the reason it was taken out, that the Russians learned that a fucking psychic had figured out where they were building this fucking Death Star weapon to shoot our satellites out of the sky. And he was fucking...
Is that what it was?
Yeah, basically that's what they were building. Nobody knew about this. This gore they were building. These spheres. They were virtually unknown. No one knew what the fuck Pat was talking about when he described these things. But
so a couple of things don't add up. How did we then get there and find that out? Because it's not like we could enter the country. And then who went back and decided to be like whose priority was it?
Well, they had to take them out. All I know is we gained access to this site somehow, either through
Russia.
Satellite imagery or through old-fashioned espionage. But we got photographs of this site, and they were astounded with what they saw. Now, it was because of this incredible viewing. Not only did Pat Price lose his life, I think because of this, and so. If you watch this movie, I think it's called Remote Spies, the documentary.
Third Eye Spies.
Third Eye Spies. You'll see the story about Price and how there was a KGB assassin who was captured, who would he gave up a lot of secrets in order to, not be thrown into the brig for the rest of his life. But one of the things he said was, we had when we killed people, we made it look like they died from whatever they were already ailing from. And they had we know the CIA had a heart attack gun because they got caught, discussing it. And then Congress was like, what the fuck is this? And so the Russians said they had one similar like it. And what they would do is they would make it seem like
you would never admit to anything.
So when Pat Price was brought to the emergency room in Las Vegas, he was brought by an unnamed. He was accompanied by an unnamed person who had a briefcase filled with Pat Price's medical records, and the guy said, "These are his records. He had previous heart conditions," and then he left. And because of that, there was no investigation. He was. He passed away. If you look at any other person, you would call that a buddy. Yeah, a buddy who just fucking drops him off give me a break, dude. You drop your friend off in the ER and they don't let you through. To finish my story, in the surgery room, like, come on, doctors, I need to see you guys operate. They asked this assassin. They said, had you ever used it? He said, I only used it once. I used it on a CIA psychic. And this was over a decade later. He admitted that he had only used this gun once, and it was to take out a CIA. You know what? I believe it. I believe it because, we do assassinate. That is a thing the Russians do. Yeah. And we are a bit superstitious, so it's possible we may have assassinated a psychic. I mean, I think a psychic who is giving out big secrets like that is a fucking danger, dude. That's a big assumptions. I mean, listen, he drew an oil. But he was right. Oil drill in Russia. He was right, and I think Russia found out about it, dude. And I think that's why he was taken out. Pat Price was taken out. This is the same Pat Price who also read our codes from a 50-foot bunker and had the entire the FBI. The FBI wanted to know why the CIA. It was a crazy mess. But what happened after these revelations, right, was the Stanford star really started to rise, right? Because they were like, holy shit, there is something to this, right? For a while anyway. So what the CIA was like, they had tried to remove Stanford from the occasion and just take Pat, and that ended up getting him killed because they had him doing some super intense work. But 2 years after that, the DIA took out a contract with the U.S. Army. This was in 1978, right? Because they were going to continue with this program in one way, shape, or form because it was effective and they knew they could use it. And they also had figured out that you didn't have to be an artist in New York. You didn't have to be that people, there was just a certain part of the population that could do this extremely well, whether they had experience with it or not. And so what they did was, this is brilliant. This is a fact now. Okay. Now, I'm discussing facts. These are verifiable facts. The DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, took out a contract with the US Army in 1978. They recruited 6,000 grunts, Vietnam vets. They chose the Vietnam vets because these were all vets who had found a way to survive minefields. They thought, this is as good a place as any to start. They got 6,000 grunts. They were screened. They looked for the 6 top people who they were going to use to spearhead the program, right? Now, they were vets that had a knack for avoiding landmines. The CIA found out about this, by the way. They were not happy about it. Now, out of all of these guys, the most remarkable one was a guy named Chief Warrant Officer Joseph McMonigle.
Oh,
Joseph W.
this
McMonigle.
guy.
He was called Remote Viewer 001, right? This guy, just typical soldier. I'm going to show you a picture of him if you're watching. Check out the screen. Apparently, this guy had a very long and lengthy career. In fact, he won it's the second highest non-combatant award that the military gives. It's called the Legion of Merit Award. It's a very, very high honor, very, very rarely given. And you got to do some pretty incredible shit in kind of civilian clothes in order to get it for the Army, which most people are not in a position to do. He was paid. He was paid really well for 6 straight years by the U.S. Army to remote view. Okay. And at his retirement, okay, just fast forward. Okay. Fast forward.
Retirement. Getting fired is not a retirement.
When you win the Legion of Merit, you don't get then fired. Okay. Like, you're held in the highest esteem. And in fact, at his retirement ceremony, this was read to the crowd that had come to it. They said, while with his command, he used his talents and expertise in the execution of more than 200 missions, addressing over 150 essential elements of information, EEIs. This is a remote viewing term. These EEI, essential elements of information, contained critical intelligence reported that the highest echelons of military and government, and included such national level agencies as the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the DIA, the NSA, the CIA, the DEA, and the Secret Service, producing crucial and vital intelligence unavailable from any other source. That's what was read at his ceremony. Okay. So
of course it was. You got to make someone look good, even the frauds.
Dude, why would the Army? These people were on a year-to-year.
They got to save face. They spent $20 million on psychics. They can't back down now.
One last thing, okay, just so you know that at the highest levels of government, even at the highest levels of government, they are aware that we, in fact, in every intelligence community, in every branch of military, when the shit hits the fan and we need help and we can't find it and we don't know what to do, we don't turn to the fucking Ghostbusters. We turn to our mediums, our psychics, and our remote viewers.
False.
And if you have trouble believing that, you can leave it to a president to speak out on it. I have a little section right here. I just want you to hear this, okay?
We had a small plane go down somewhere in Africa, and we needed very much to find out where that plane had crashed, and we were not able to find it by surveillance. So the director of the CIA heard about a woman in California that was a medium or something. I don't know the title for. And she gave him the latitude and longitude of the plane's whereabouts. We located the plane where she said it was. And that's the only time that I have ever experienced something that was inexplicable while I was president.
President Jimmy Carter said that in 2016. That's the only time he ever experienced something inexplicable while he was president. He was
Very
talking
true.
about a remote viewer. He was talking about the infamous, the Tupolev, what did they call it? The Tupolev bomber, right? And it was a downed Russian bomber. It went down in Zaire, and there was a mad scramble. They knew the Russians found out that it went down. It's always the Russians, man. It's so crazy. And so there was a race to get it. They didn't want the Russians to find the technology. They were fucking losing their shit. So they turned to the remote viewers, and the remote viewers gave them the exact longitude and latitude to find it. And they did find it because they approached Jimmy Carter and said, "We got it. One of our psychics got it." And that's he wrote about that. If you want to read that account, read his autobiography, the one he published in 2016, and you can read about it.
Faust is right about that, but specifically, Jimmy Carter was misremembering. In the voice recording, you hear him say that it's a woman. If you look at the actual declassified documents, it was actually a group of let me see, I think there were 15 remote viewers. Hold on. It was, no. It was a group of psychics. They don't say how many in the group. It was September 4, 1979, and they pinpointed the location of this plane to within 15 miles in a radius. If you look up the actual area they were basically looking at, it's like mountain forest area, and then it's basically
she gave the exact latitude and longitude.
So you're taking left or right. No, they did, but essentially it was within 15 miles of that place. So if people are already looking, they pretty much got a message, "Hey, the psychic said you're on the right track." And they get this energized feeling, and they found it. That's exactly what happened.
Hey guys, you know what we're gonna do? We'll include some links to some documentaries. There's some great clips out there that show a lot of what I was talking about. And there's some great videos that show the opposite side and the explanation of some of these things and how they can be explained. Listen, we want to know what you guys think. If you have any experience with this, what do you know that we don't know? Please shoot us a comment. We love to carry on this discussion. And if you like this video, check out our video, our first episode on Uri Gellar. We were discussing spoon bending, but we got into some of the well-documented experiments that were done at Stanford research. And so if you check out that video and keep an eye out for more episodes coming out, guys, we'd love to hear about you in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the alert button so you know when we got podcasts, we got a series, we got a ton of incredible shorts we're lining up for you guys. Nick's doing some awesome work on these shorts, and we're putting them together. Some really fantastic, exciting facts, kind of did you know, blow your mind kind of stuff coming out. So keep an eye out for those. We're getting those ready. And thank you guys for staying tuned in with us.
Join us in the comments for the battleground.
Yeah.
If you want to get destroyed.
And tell us who you think won, because you just keep trouncing someone, and if they don't know they've been beaten, it's confusing for them. So let Nick know what you think, and let me know what you think. Please. And thanks.
Let me know about your remote viewing experiences.
remote view Nick crying after I end this broadcast. Join me. And maybe you can send him a comment to cheer him up. All right, Nick. Peace, brother. Thanks for this.